The strength of the bamboo. In a quiet village tucked between the mountains and the sea, young Kenji spent every afternoon in his grandfather's workshop. For weeks, he had been crafting a special wooden lantern for the Summer Stars Festival. He carefully carved patterns of waves into the cedar panels, his heart full of excitement. This lantern would be his contribution to the village's harmony, a light to guide the way for the celebration. The night before the festival, the sky turned the color of bruised plums. A fierce storm swept in from the ocean, howling through the narrow streets. Kenji lay awake, listening to the wind battering the walls of their home and the heavy rain drumming on the roof. He thought of his lantern resting in the garden shed and hoped the latch would hold against the fury of the gale. When the sun rose, the village was silent. Kenji ran outside and stopped in his tracks. The garden was a tangle of mud and fallen branches. The shed door had been torn away, and his beautiful lantern lay in the dirt, smashed into a dozen jagged pieces. His throat tightened, and a hot tear pricked his eye. Everything he had worked for was ruined in a single night. His grandfather, Takeo, walked into the yard. He did not cry out or complain about the fallen trees or the mud coating the porch. Instead, he tucked his sleeves back and began to move the heavy debris. He worked with a quiet, steady rhythm, his face calm and his movements purposeful. He didn't look for someone to blame. He simply saw what needed to be done. "It's not fair, grandfather," Kenji whispered, his voice trembling with frustration. "The festival is tonight, and everything is broken." Takeo stopped and looked at his grandson. "This is a time for Gaman, Kenji," he said softly. "It is the strength to bear the unbearable with dignity. Like the bamboo in the storm, we bend so we do not break. We keep our spirits quiet so the village can find its peace again." Kenji took a deep breath. He looked at his muddy hands and then at his grandfather's tired but determined face. He realized that complaining would not fix the lantern or the garden. It would only add to the heaviness of the day. He picked up a stiff brush and began to scrub the thick mud from the stone path. Each stroke was a lesson in patience, a quiet promise to stay strong. Neighbors began to emerge from their homes, some looking overwhelmed by the mess. Mrs. Sato, who lived next door, stood by her gate with a look of despair. Kenji didn't say a word about his own lost lantern. Instead, he filled a bucket with fresh water and brought it to her, offering a small, respectful nod. By maintaining his own composure, he helped her find the strength to begin her own work. In the afternoon, Takeo sat with Kenji on the porch. Between them lay the broken pieces of the cedar lantern. They didn't speak of the disappointment. They spoke of how to mend what was left. With steady hands and strong glue, they began to fit the jagged edges back together. The lantern would never be perfect again, but the cracks told a story of survival and grace. The festival was not as grand as in years past, but the village square was filled with a different kind of beauty. As the sun set, Kenji lit his mended lantern. The light flickered through the cracks, casting long, dancing shadows on the ground. He felt a deep sense of pride, not because his work was flawless, but because he had faced the hardship without letting it change his heart. As the lanterns began to glow across the village, Kenji stood beside Takeo. They watched the lights bobbing in the twilight, a sea of quiet resilience. Kenji realized that Gaman was not just about enduring pain. It was about holding onto one's dignity to keep the world around you harmonious. He had found a light inside himself that was far brighter than any lantern.